Shalom, shalom. Want to give our honor and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushua, brother Yahweh with the servants. Back at it again with another video through the Spirit, right? So this video, right, is what race or nation fits the curses in Deuteronomy, part 3, right? You've been paying attention. We had a part 1, we had a part 2, now we on part 3, right? So we finna go, what we're doing is we're going to go into the curses that are in the Bible, right? They're in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy, right, is a part of the first 5 books of the Bible, right? It's book number 5, right? So we're going to go into the book of Deuteronomy, and there are different curses that the Lord said He would place upon the Israelites, His chosen people, for their disobedience, right? So what we're doing is we're looking at the different curses that are in Deuteronomy that the Lord placed on His people for their disobedience, and we're looking and seeing, well, what race nowadays in 2025, what race or nation actually fits those curses, right? So we're gonna go ahead and hop into this thing, and we're gonna start off with this, so we can for those people that haven't, probably haven't read Deuteronomy or have heard of this, what we're talking about, you go ahead and get it. So this is the book of Deuteronomy, and you can start at verse 28. Right now, I'm gonna show y'all something. So in the first part, hold on, make sure that my screen is sharing as well. All right, present my screen. Shalom, shalom. So I'm sharing my screen. Right. So when the Lord told the Israelites, He said, "Hey, at first it wasn't just curses that Lord said He would place upon them. He gave them A, you can get blessings, or B, you can get curses." Right. So let's get this. It's Deuteronomy 28:1. It says, "And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all His commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth." So Lord plainly said that the Israelites keep His commandments and hearken diligently, then hey, they're going to be blessed and they're going to be placed above all nations of the earth, right? And then when you actually read the Bible, right, it tells you, right, that the Israelites did not do this, right? And I brought this out in the first lesson, but I'm gonna bring this out for those that don't know this, because some will say, well, how do we know that they didn't listen, right? So we're going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 31, and we're going to go to verse 16, right? It says this, right? It says, "And the Lord said unto Moses, Behold, thou shalt sleep with thy fathers." And that's basically meaning Moses is going to pass away. And it says, "And this people will rise up and go a whoring after other gods of the strangers of the land, where they go to be among them." And so when it says they're going to go a whoring after other gods, they mean they're going to go and serve other gods, which is which is breaking a commandment, right? That's breaking a law. We can only have one God, and that's the Most High God. We cannot, as Israelites, God chosen people cannot serve any other God, right? So the Lord told Moses, you're gonna pass away, and these people, they're going to end up serving other gods, right? Because they're going to break my commandments, right? And it says, "Will they go to be among them, and will forsake me and break my covenant which I made with them." So straight like that, the Most High is letting Moses know, these people, they're going to go after strange gods. They're going to forsake me. They're going to break my covenant, right? So that's how we know that the Israelites end up not listening, because Lord said that would happen, right? So with that being said, now we understand that the curses that Lord said that He will place upon them for not listening is going to be implemented, right? So we're going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 15, right? For those that probably haven't read this, right? It says, "But it shall come to pass, if thou shalt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all His commandments and His statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee." So boom, you see in the earlier part of the passage, right? He said, "Hey, if you do what I tell you, you're going to receive blessings." Right now, in this part, it's saying, well, hey, if you don't do what I tell you, right? He said, "I'm going to put some curses upon you," right? So let's go down, because one would say, well, hey, that was, thousands of years ago, right? The Israelites are not going to still be in curses now, right? They're not under curses anymore. That's done away with, right? Well, let's see, right? Oh, that's just the Old Testament. Well, let's see what the Bible actually says, right? So let's go to Deuteronomy 28 and let's go to verse 45, right? So it says, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee and shall pursue thee and overtake thee, right? And with that being said, the Israelites as a nation, right, will be consumed by curses. Not saying, okay, well, it's one person or it's a few here and there that's under these curses. It's saying as a whole, right, y'all going to be cursed, right? Because you do have your different ones or twosies here and there, but no, as a nation, right, you're going to be cursed, right? And when I say ones and twosies, when you like for instance, you have the curse of verse 16 where it says, "Cursed shall thou be in the city." Basically, you're going to be the poorest in the city. You're going to be in the slums, the ghettos, and the hoods. And you have some people. They say, "Well, hey, I know some or so-called white men in the hood, or that's and that." That's like your ones and twos. Like you might see one or two. You might see that, but as a totality, the whole people that make up the hoods, the ghettos, and the slums, so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. That's a fact, right? So we're talking about people that are under curses as a totality, right? As a whole nation, as a whole race, right? So now it says, verse 45 again, it says, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee and shall pursue thee and overtake thee till thou be destroyed, right? Because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God to keep his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee, right? So very simply put, God's chosen people, the Israelites, right, were commanded to keep his commandments, right? And when you go to the when you go to the book of Exodus, right? You're reading Exodus, you're reading Leviticus, you're reading Numbers, and also Deuteronomy. You start to see these different laws the Lord gave to the Israelites as a nation to keep, right? And so by them breaking these laws, like he told the Israelites that they cannot consume pork, right? He told the Israelites they cannot serve other gods. He told the Israelites they got to keep the Sabbath day holy, right? He told the Israelites they cannot commit adultery, and so forth and so forth and so forth and so forth, right? He told the Israelites they can't eat shrimp, crab, and lobster. He told the Israelites these things, right? But they end up going contrary to that, right? Doing the opposite, right? Breaking the commandments instead of keeping them, right? So it says, and they shall be upon thee for a sign and a wonder. So it's going, now you see this a semicolon here, right? That's a semicolon right there. So it goes further in to what it's talking about. Right, it says, and they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder. So, and we know that when he goes to the word sign, that's an identifier, right? When you see signs, like you see a sign that says, oh, you see the golden arches, right? That's an identifier. Oh, that's pub. That mean not pub. That's McDonald's, right? You see the green letters, right? That say PUBLIX, right? You know it's Publix, right? So forth and so forth. See, we know we identify when we see signs, we identify that sign with something, right? So in retrospect too, when you see different signs or symptoms of a disease, that's how doctors know that somebody have a certain disease. Why? Because they're showing signs of having that disease, right? So with that being said, you have different these curses are going to be identifiers, right? To see, well, hey, these are who the Israelites are. Why? Because these identifiers apply to these people, right? So it says, in the wonder, and upon thy seed forever. So that means that also in 2025, the year 2025, right, that the Israelites will still be under the curses. It didn't say, well, when Christ come on the scene, that's when all the curses that's gonna be done away with. That is not the case. That is not true, right? So even after Christ came on the scene, the Israelites are still under the curses, right? It says, because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for abundance of all things, right? So that's what happened, right? So in 2025, you still have Israelites that are under the curses, right? So we're going to see again. That's why this whole lesson about we're identifying what nation or what race actually fits these curses. So we covered a couple of curses in prior lessons. So we're going to go to this one right here. It says Deuteronomy 28 verse 61. Also, every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of this law, them will the Lord bring upon thee until thou be destroyed. Right? So the Lord said, well, hey, there's going to be curses and plagues that's not written inside the Bible, right? That I'm going to place upon the Israelites. Right? So then we start to look, let's see what some curses that's not written in the Bible. I mean, what some sicknesses, right? So I can tell you right now, the heart attack, right? Stroke, diabetes, right? Gout and different things like that. AIDS, HIV, right? These things are not written in the Bible, right? So let's see what people lead in having these different sicknesses, right? And we look at the heart attack and strokes and stroke and diabetes, right? These are like the top killers of in the nation, right? Of America, what do you want to say? So let's go to these different articles, right? So first I want to bring this out, right? So y'all can see what I'm talking about. And what we're bringing out, these different articles is for educational purposes, right? This is our thoughts on this content, right? We're just educating our people, right? So there you have it, right? So the number of unalivings, right, for leading cause of unalive, right? I don't want to use that word, y'all know what it is, right? It says heart disease, cancer, right? Accidents, unintentional injuries. You see that the C thing, right? Stroke, chronic lower respiratory diseases, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, right? Nephritis, nephrotic syndrome, nephris, chronic liver disease, and cirrhosis. Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to see, right, what people are affected by these things the most. Now, we're not going to go to everything on this list, right? But I'm going to pick a few things out of this list, right? And I'm going to start at number 1, heart disease, right? I'm going to start at that one, right? So let's go here, right? Now, this is from the right here. This is actually from this article is from my Cleveland Clinic.org, right? So it says this cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death, right, in the US. Biracial and ethnic minority groups carry a heavier burden, right? Heart disease risk factors and diseases are more common among ethnic minorities. Now, who are they talking about when they say ethnic minorities? 9 times out of 10, a big opportunity talking about so-called blacks, right? Very rarely when they talk about that talk, you might hear they talking about a Chinaman here and there, but they most talk about the blacks and Hispanics, right? And you're gonna further see this in the latter part of the article, right? So it says social factors known as social determinants of health drive these health disparities, right? So we're gonna read down. It says how do race and ethnicity play a role in cardiovascular disease, right? So it says cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death of all adults, but it hits some people, especially minority groups, harder than others. So what that means is this is one of the number 1 diseases, right? The number 1 disease that take out all people, right? But the people that get hit the most is who? It says, for example, 47% of black adults have been diagnosed with cardiovascular disease. So according to this article, right, this data, to this statistic, right, the so-called black man is more prone to get cardiovascular disease than any other race, right? But the Lord say again, right? This almost half. That's 47% is almost half, right? So that goes back again to the Lord say, well, I'm going to place sicknesses, right, and plagues upon you that's not written in this book, right? It says compared to 36% of white adults, right? When it comes to heart disease risk factors, minority groups also carry a heavier burden. Hispanic women, we say the so-called blacks, Hispanics, right, and the Native Americans, right, are what? God's chosen people, the Israelites, right? Let's see what it says. Hispanic women are more than twice as likely as white women to have diabetes, right? We didn't even get to that. We haven't even gotten to that, right? But that's one of the diseases. That's also one of the diseases, right, that's plaguing our people, right? And let's and check this out, right? Which is a major risk factor for heart disease, right? So by them being hit with diabetes, now they're even more prone, right, to having heart disease. So what does that mean? That means also that a Hispanic woman, right, which is the Israelites as well, the one that's not from now when I say that, I'm talking about the one that's not of Spaniard descent, right? Because the Spaniards is the descendants of so-called white, right? They the same people, right? Anyways, so with that being said, right, that means they're more prone to have what? Heart disease, cardiovascular disease, right? It says in American Indians, Native Americans, are 3 times more likely than whites to have diabetes. So here we have, right, and we see that when it says diabetes, right, that means you're also more prone to what? Have heart disease, which is what? Cardiovascular disease, right? So with that being said, look at this paragraph, right? Our stance is the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans is God's chosen people, the Israelites. Now, when we look into the scriptures and we talk about the curses, which Lord would say will be upon the Israelites for a very long dispensation of time, right? So a very long time, a lot of years, hundreds of years, right? We look in 2025 and we go through the different curses and we see like, dang, these curses are identifiers. They're connected to the same group of people. It's the same group. In these 2 paragraphs, it mentions the so-called blacks, it mentions the Hispanics, right, and it mentions the so-called American Indians, right, which we state, which our claim is, right, that we are God's chosen people, the Israelites, right, and this thing is saying that these people, right, these group of people, they lead in cardiovascular disease, which is not written in the Bible. But the Bible tells you, right? Let's go back to it. 28:61. Right? These are not my words. Right? It says, also every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of this law, then will the Lord bring upon thee until thou be destroyed. Straight like that, right? The heart cardiovascular disease is a sickness. Diabetes is a sickness, right? And we seeing right now like who's leading in these different things, right? So right? So we have there, right? Let's go to another article. We're gonna get some more articles, right? Let me see if it's something. Let me see if it's something is something more on this. No, it's not. That's it on that. So let me go back to this right here. Right. So at this chart right here, we have the next disease or sickness, right? Rather, I want to say is stroke. We're going to stroke next, right? We're going to go to stroke and we're going to see what nation or what race of people lead in strokes, right? And again, these are one of the top sicknesses in America, right? So let's go here. And this from the I'm gonna read this. And then I'm gonna go to this article. It's by nih.gov. I'm gonna go there. Go to next. Right. So, all right, hold on, bear with me. Oh, snap. Give me a second. I gotta get my charger real fast. Get that real fast. Okay. Okay, cool. All right, cool. So let's get back to it. Make sure everything's still straight. Okay. Con. So let's read it. It says, research indicates that Black adults are more likely to experience strokes compared to their white counterparts. Right? It's I mean, you literally can't make this up, right? We're not making this up. We're showing you statistics, we're showing you data, and we're showing you where in the Bible it says that, hey, God's chosen people, they're gonna get sicknesses, they're gonna get plagues that are not named in the book. And the beautiful thing is, okay, somebody say, but the so-called white men have these diseases too. But who leads in getting in these diseases? Who leads in these? Who have them the most? Right? Every time it's hit on the head, so-called Black men. Right? It says in Hispanics and Native Americans as well. Right? So it says studies show that Black Americans face a higher risk of stroke, particularly at a younger age, despite a decline in overall stroke incidence. So even though you have a decline in stroke incidence, you still have the so-called Black woman still have a higher risk of chance of having it even at a younger age, right? So it says the disparity is attributed to differences in stroke occurrences rates rather than outcomes following a stroke, right? So and then when you think about it, bro, on the level, bro, you ask a so-called a Black man or a Black woman, do you know somebody, do you know a family member of somebody that you know of your race that have, they know somebody, right? So let's get this. It says this. This is an article by nih.gov, and again, we're bringing out these things for educational purposes. All right, fair use. So it says racial disparities in stroke incidents and death, right? Their work. It says a study found that differences between Black and white people in rates of stroke death are due to rates of stroke occurrence, not the outcomes following stroke. All right. It says the findings highlight the importance of efforts to control stroke risk factors such as high blood pressure, diabetes, that are disproportionately affect Black people. So it's saying, bro, at a disproportionate rate, right? The so-called Black man and Black woman, right, at a higher level is getting what? High blood pressure, diabetes, right? Which what could cause stroke, and what also could diabetes cause? Cardiovascular disease, right? So let's go into this, right? It says a stroke occurs. So for those that don't know, okay, so they kind of going into it like what a stroke is, right? So a stroke occurs when blood vessels that supply the brain become ruptured or blocked. When blood can't bring nutrients and oxygen to brain cells, the cells stop functioning and die. Stroke death rates have declined almost 70% in the past 50 years, with stroke now the fifth leading cause of death in the U.S. This decrease is thought to stem from better control of stroke risk factors, including hypertension, diabetes, and smoking cessation, and advances in post-stroke care, right? Studies have found that Black people between ages 45 and 54 die of strokes at the rates that's 3 times greater than their white counterparts, right? So they're saying it's 3 times greater chance that a so-called Black person, right, will get a stroke compared to the so-called white man. 3 times. Again, right? So with that being said, when it comes to these different diseases and things like that, it's either we're leading in these things, right? We're the nation of people that's most affected by these diseases, right? So let's go to another one. All right, let's go to another disease that's not written inside this book. All right. All right. Check this out. Right. It says now this is another right. This is another disease or sickness, right? That's another one. I'm talking about we're just going, we're going boom, we're going bar for bar. This disease, that disease, this disease, that disease. I'm talking these are big life claimers, right? And look who's the nation or race that's leading at being unalive, right, by these different sicknesses, right? That are again not written into the Bible. But Lord said that this would happen to the Israelites, right? It says black Black African American people and Hispanics, right? Latino people, right? Again, that's why our stance is again that the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans is God chosen people, right? And with that being said, right, we're the people of the nations, they're the races that fits these curses in Deuteronomy chapter 28, right? It says our particular effect, and not only that, when you go into the different history and things that happened to me, actually dive deep, like where we came from, the language that we speak, and all these different things where we come from. We tie to the Israelites, right? We tie to the Israelites, God's chosen people. But it says Black African American people and Hispanic Latino people are particularly affected by HIV, making up more than half, 70% of a estimated new HIV infection in 2022. Gosh, 70%, making up more than half, right? 70% of estimated new HIV infections in 2022 were so-called Black, Hispanic people, right? That is insane. That's insane, right? Get the latest data on HIV by race, ethnicity. HIV affects some groups more than others. Again, they keep saying these different diseases, they affect certain groups more than others. But it's that Bible holding true to what the Lord actually said is going to happen. It's actually happening before our eyes. Like it's like something you can't deny. You can say, well, hey, I don't think that. Well, this is the facts. You can't deny the facts, right? So here we go. It says fast facts: HIV in the U.S. by race and ethnicity. While HIV affects all races and ethnicities in the United States, some groups are there's that word again, disproportionately affected compared to their population size, right? So compared to our population size, one would say we ain't got that many people. They kind of say we the minorities, when it's less of us and more of them, right? But despite how many of us is, a lot of us, a great number of us, is affected by these diseases, right? It says Black African American people and Hispanic Latino people are particularly affected by HIV, making up more than half, 70% of, and this is from the CDC, man. The CDC, right? Estimated new HIV infections in 2022. Get the latest data on HIV by race and ethnicity, right? So let's see what we have here. So it says Black African American people account for 37% of estimated new HIV infections, even though they make up 12% of the U.S. population. So right after them it's the Hispanics, right? Right there, they're right there. So what they're saying is, it's way more. They're saying it's more white people than Black people, right? And they're saying, despite that being said, we still make up the most people being affected by HIV and AIDS, right? It says HIV diagnosis refers to the number of people who receive an HIV diagnosis during a given year, right? So that's what they have right here. They have the numbers there. So when you go to this chart right here, it says HIV diagnosis, right, in the U.S. in 6 territories and freely associated states by race and ethnicity, 2022, right? It says here, 38% for blacks and 32% for Hispanic. That's where they come up with a number of 70%, right? 38 plus 32 is 70, right? Very simple, right? That's where they come up with that, right? So it says, now check this out now. It says racism, HIV stigma, discrimination, homophobia, poverty, and other barriers to healthcare continue to drive disparities in HIV diagnosis, right? Now check this out. This is crazy. It says now they're going into by the sex, right? So when it comes to like as in women being diagnosed, right? When it comes to women being diagnosed, half of the women that's being diagnosed with HIV or AIDS is a so-called Black woman. That is crazy, right? That is crazy, right? But then when it goes to Hispanic, it's 20. And guess what? When it's at 20, right? Guess what is that? That's 70%, right? Off the head, right there, right? So again, now we know this is like a well-known disease in America, right? And it has claimed the lives of a lot of people, right? This is no joke. We've seen different shows that do different little shows off of it. Like it's a well-known thing, right? It's no joke. It's no joke, and it has claimed the lives of a lot of our people, right? And you have well-known so-called Black people that have had this thing. You know, Magic Johnson, right? Let's go to this. I wanted to get this back in the Bible, right? Where it says this. Also, every sickness and every plague which is not written, is Deuteronomy 28, verse 61. It says, every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of this law, them will the Lord bring upon thee until thou be destroyed. Right? So, and that's just, we covered stroke, we covered cardiovascular disease. We even, because they even talked about diabetes, right? But we're gonna bring the statistics on diabetes. We're gonna bring the data, right? And that's gonna be the last we're gonna do on that. But we even brought in HIV and AIDS, right? So we brought about 5 different diseases, right? And off the rip, right? It's saying that the so-called Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, that they are the ones that are leading in having these things, right? Having these different diseases and sicknesses, right? They are leading in these things, right? So let's go to and these things that I'm looking at, you can look these up yourself, right? It's Google is right there at your hand. And it's very simple, right? So now let's go to this right here. It says Black, Indigenous, Hispanic, right? I ain't even gonna, I want you to see the first three though. Black, Indigenous, and Hispanic. Because that's very important. Because these first three is the ones that's the Israelites, right? The second one, the Asian, they come from the Asian people, they come from Ammon and Ammon and Moab, the Ammonites and the Moabites, right? That's our first time really seeing them on a list like that, right? So it's, yeah. Out of all different diseases we talk about, that they the first time. This is the first time we even seen them pop up, right? So let's go to now this is the same. We're gonna go to the NIH.gov as well. They got an article on this. They got a chart on this as well. Article on this. Let's go to this. Okay. It's a lot here, man. I got a headache right now, man. It's just Satan, man. But I'm gonna push through this thing, man. Right. We gonna push through this. So let's go to it. All right. Satan, man. Right. So it says, we're gonna start here. It says health disparities in diabetes, right, and its complications and comorbidities exist globally. A recent endocrine society scientific statement described the health disparities in several endocrine disorders, including type 2 diabetes. In this review, we summarize that statement and provide novel updates and race and ethnic differences in children and adults with type 1 diabetes, children with type 2 diabetes, and Latino subpopulations. We also review race ethnic differences and the epidemiology. Should I want to start this word? Epidemiology of diabetes, pre-diabetes, and diabetes complications and mortality in the United States and globally. Finally, we discuss biological behavior, social, environmental, and health system contributors to diabetes disparities in order to identify areas for future preventive interventions, right? And what we're going, I'm reading this article so we can see, right, when it comes to ethnic groups, right, to race, who lead in what diabetes? Because we talked about, again, cardiovascular disease, stroke. We talked about high blood pressure very briefly. We talked about HIV and AIDS, right? So now we're going to cover diabetes. All right. So let's go down some. It says this. It says health disparities in diabetes and its complications and comorbidities exist. This introduction is basically the same thing it just said. So I'm gonna skip the introduction and I'm gonna jump down. Right. So it says Williams defines ethnicity as a complex, multidimensional construct reflecting the confluence of biological factors and geographical origins, culture, and economic, political, and legal factors, as well as racism. The concepts of race and ethnicity play important roles in understanding disparities in health and healthcare. Now, it's funny that it says this, right? It says geographical origins, right? They define ethnicity by geographical origins. Now, the funny thing is the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans have the same geographical origins, right? They originate from the same place. They are the same people. The next word, it says culture. They have the same culture. The so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, they descend from the Hebrew Israelites, right? When you go, there's different. You gotta dig into this, and Lord willing, um, we're gonna I'm gonna do a video on that as well, tying the because there's evidence out there that ties the Seminole Indian and different Native American groups, right, to being the Hebrew Israelites. There's a book out there, 103 facts about the Native Americans. I want to say that's the name of the book. There's several books and different articles and different historical things. There's also there was in a grave mound, there was like this coffin, right? And inside this little thing, like a small little coffin thing, inside of it, there was like this little scroll or something that basically had the Hebrew, the native Hebrew, the Paleo Hebrew language, right? Which is the language that the Hebrew Israelites spoke, right, in ancient times. But this was found in a Native American burial mound, right? Right. So again, and it's a plethora of more things, right, that ties these groups to the same culture and geographical origins, right? But what we're also doing, we're showing the connection between the different curses that Lord say will be upon the Israelites, and how we see these different we see the so-called blacks, we see the Hispanics, and we see the Native Americans, right, and we see how they are affected, right, by all these many different curses that Lord say will happen to the Israelites for their disobedience, right? So we're gonna jump down, right? And it says the current literature describing disparities in diabetes varies in terms used to define specific race ethnic groups. As done previously, for consistency, we will use the term non-Hispanic black to refer to Israel's of African descent, right? And not knowing that the Hispanics, right, they have African descent, right? There's also evidence on that as well, right? And Lord willing, we get into that as well, right? Again, these are people that we're looking at a time limit. Like, they at one point in time they was all in the same area, but over time and over all these different captivities that the Israelites they have been in for the disobedience, they have spread to different parts of the world, right? Thus, they have spread to different parts of the world and intermingled with different races, right? Thus, you have Israelites that speak different dialects, look a little bit different, right? Because they have intermingled with different people. They have went to different places, right? And over time, adopting their own little culture, as in you have the Native Americans, they have their own little so-called culture, right? And the Hispanics, they have their different culture, not knowing, right? They all had the same culture at one point in time, right? Had at one point in time, and then you see small bits, right, of the culture that they all had at one time. Like in different Native American pictures, they have like on the bottom of the Native American garments, they would have fringes on their garments, right? And even in that little chant, that oh yeah yeah yeah, they was chanting Yahweh's name, that which is the Most High's name, right? In their chants, right? So it's different little things out there. Like, you just gotta do your research, and again, Lord willing, we can get those things out there, right? But right now we're focusing on the curse that said. I just want to put that out there, but we're focusing on the curse that said that Lord's going to place sicknesses and plagues upon the Israelites that's not written in the book of the law, right? So let's keep going. Right, it says non-Hispanic white and of non-minority individual, Hispanic American for those of Mexican, South American, Cuban, or Puerto Rican descent born in or residing in the U.S. Right. So I kind of want to I kind of want to get straight to the point though. They're not really getting to the point like I wanted to. Right. Hold on. Let me get some. So here we have it here. So when we look at this chart, right, this table chart, it says age-adjusted prevalence of diagnosed diabetes mellitus in the United States by race, ethnicity in adults 20 years of age and over, right? So you have age-adjusted prevalence, 7.1% when it comes to the so-called white man, right? That's non-Hispanic whites, right? Asian Americans, 8.4, right? So when we look at this, though, it says this: when a Hispanic overall 11.8, so it's more, right, than the whites and the Asians, right? Non-Hispanic blacks, right, 12.6, right, which is more than the Hispanics, right? Then you have the Native Americans, 33%. So between the Native Americans, right, and we talking about these are the same people, Native Americans, Hispanics, and the so-called blacks, the same people. So between the Native Americans, 33%, you got the non-Hispanic blacks, that's 12.6. So now we had let me see. We had 55, right? We had 55. Yeah, we had 55. We had 55. We had 55.6, right? Now you got 11.8, right? So now you're looking at what, roughly about 70, over 70%, right? So over 70% in all these groups, right? The so-called Hispanics, blacks, Native Americans, they lead over all the other nations. I mean, all the other races at 70%. When you total it all up, I mean, not at 70, but over 70%, right? That's how much. That's how much, right? So basically, when it comes to the Israelites in totality, again, as in the totality, right? We as a people, right? When you add us together, we lead in all these different diseases and sicknesses. Why? Because we broke the commandments of the Most High God, and this was one of the consequences that He said would happen to His people for breaking the law, for breaking the covenant, for forsaking the Most High. This is why, right? So let's get I kind of spend a little minute on this thing, but it's kind of we're gonna wind down. You know what I'm saying? I kind of just want to kind of I spent a lot of time on that one, but I just kind of wanted to show y'all through the spirit, right? Cause we going again, this is the third part, but we're going to these different curses and showing y'all that when it comes to these curses that's in Deuteronomy, man, the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, we fit these curses. We fit these curses. We are the people of the book. We are God's chosen people, and the statistics and the data shows it. It's undeniable evidence, right? So, Lord willing, I can do another one of these through the Spirit, right? We kind of focused a big time on Deuteronomy 28 and verse 61. We showed a lot of different and we could have went. I really could have went. I could have went through more diseases, but I kind of stopped it right there, right? But there you have it, though. So, Lord willing, that was edifying through the Spirit. Want to give our honor and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushua, Heavenly Father, Shalom, 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 and Kwam Yasha Allah.